All right, mate. Today we are going to talk about something people circle around, but very few actually break down. Not rumors, not speculation, not the wild theories that get thrown around online. We are going to talk about the first day of the search for Samantha Murphy, because if there is one thing that keeps coming up in Australian disappearances, it is this. When day one is not tight, everything that follows becomes recovery, not rescue. To be clear, we do not have the internal police logs or the minute-by-minute operational notes. What we do have are confirmed times, media reports, official statements, and the record of where police and emergency services actually deployed resources in those early hours and days. From that information, a pattern starts to emerge. And that pattern raises one uncomfortable question. Did the search for Samantha Murphy begin too wide when it needed to be far more precise? Let's start with what we know. On Sunday morning, 4th of February 2024, 51-year-old Samantha Murphy left her home on Eureka Street in Ballarat East around 7 in the morning for a run. She regularly used the Canadian Forest and Woowookarung Regional Park tracks. She knew the area well. She was fit and familiar with the terrain. She was captured leaving home on CCTV. After that, she vanished. She did not return home. She did not contact family. No one saw her out on the track, and very quickly she was reported missing. That activated a large response. Victoria Police, SES, volunteers, neighbours, and community members all began searching in the bushland near her home and along the trails she was known to use. Her mobile phone later connected with a tower near Buninyong, roughly 14 kilometres away. Searches were eventually conducted in multiple locations, including Canadian State Forest, Enfield State Park, and areas around Buninyong and Durham Lead. But on day one, the search began closer to home, and inside the bushland runners typically use. Here is where the first major question appears. When someone disappears in the bush, you can begin one of two ways. You can start broad, searching where they usually go, or you can begin extremely tight, locking in on the last confirmed point and building outward from that location in controlled, expanding circles. Both approaches can work, but only one of them preserves the fragile early clues. From the outside, looking only at publicly available information, it appears that the early search for Samantha started in the broader category of search the usual running area. That makes sense if the assumption is that she became lost, injured, or disoriented, and police did say at the time that the disappearance was not initially treated as suspicious. But if the last confirmed point, including the phone's interaction with the tower, was already known or strongly suspected on day one, then the choice of starting wide instead of starting tight becomes a very serious point of analysis. The terrain adds another layer. Woowookarung Regional Park is not a simple, flat, clean environment. It is dense in parts, sparse in others, with rough ground, sudden drops, informal trails, fire breaks, and areas where footprints and vegetation disturbances vanish extremely quickly. Anyone who has spent time in that forest knows that if you do not hit the correct target zone early, the bush will erase your clues. Heat, wind, traffic, cyclists, dogs, and time all work against you. That is why day one is everything. If you find the right area early, you get signs, a footprint, a mark in soft soil, compressed vegetation, a dropped item, a broken twig, something. If you begin too broad, those signs evaporate. Now again, we cannot state exactly what police prioritized in the first hour, because that information is not publicly available. But we can see the chronological pattern. The search started in the bushland near her home, expanded through the park, expanded again into other Ballarat locations, and then eventually shifted significantly toward Buninyong and Enfield when new leads and new information came into play. That timeline does not look like a tight, fixed-point lockdown from the start. It looks like a gradually widening and shifting operation. And for this kind of terrain, that raises questions. There is another question people keep revisiting. When someone is running and something goes wrong, whether fatigue, disorientation, injury or distress, their movement patterns change. They tend to slow down. They tend to avoid steep climbs. They tend to drift toward easier downward ground. That is not speculation. That is a widely recognized behavioral pattern in wilderness incidents worldwide. So the question becomes this: was enough emphasis placed early on the most probable terrain-driven movement? We cannot say yes or no conclusively, but it is a fair question given how little solid evidence emerged from the earliest sweeps of the bush. Complicating everything is the shift in police thinking that came later. Initially, they did not treat the disappearance as suspicious. But as days passed and no trace of Samantha was found, their position changed. Eventually, this became a homicide investigation. The search was scaled back, detectives took over, and by late February, police publicly stated they believed she was dead and that one or more people were involved. In March 2024, Patrick Orrin Stevenson was arrested and charged with her murder. Samantha's body has still not been found. When you view day one through the later reality, the questions become even heavier. If this was a criminal act from the beginning, and not a missing runner scenario, then the first hours were critical not just for finding her, but for identifying vehicle routes, road exits, time windows, and potential disposal areas. That kind of urgency demands precision, not breadth. Months later, Samantha's phone and personal items were recovered near a dam in the Buninyong and Durham Lead area. That discovery further shifts the conceptual center of the case away from the bushland where she ran and into the idea of movement, transport, and deliberate concealment. And again, it forces us to re-examine day one. Were road networks scrutinized early enough? Were potential vehicle movements given the proper priority? Could any of that have been captured if the mindset had shifted sooner? We cannot answer these questions definitively, but we are allowed to ask them. So what was the mistake that changed everything? We cannot point to a single documented step and claim it as proven fact. What we can say, based on public information, is that the likely mistake was conceptual. The early search seems to have been shaped around the assumption that Samantha was a missing runner in the bush, not a victim of homicide whose body may have been moved. And when you start from that assumption, the first day naturally becomes broader, slower, and less aggressive than it needs to be in cases where criminal involvement is possible. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe the first day of the search was handled as tightly as it should have been? Yes or no? And more importantly, why? Tell me what you think could have been done differently. Would you have locked in harder on the last confirmed location? Would you have treated the situation as suspicious earlier? Would you have prioritized monitoring roads and vehicle movements? Your perspective matters, and I want to read it. And if you want ongoing coverage that questions systems, not just individuals, make sure you follow the channel. Comment your thoughts below, subscribe so you do not miss the next investigation, and I will see you in the next one.